Domestic football returns this week. For a bit of fun today, we're going to have a look at a Supercomputer's Premier League predictions from now until the end of the season. This is their table prediction for the end of the 23-24 season. Hello guys, how are we all doing? Welcome back to yet another video. As I say, domestic football returns this week. Thank God we are back with Premier League and Championship weekly predictions from Wednesday. And today we are doing something that we did for the EFL Championship on Friday. We are looking at a supercomputer from BetVictor's table predictions for the end of the season. BetVictor uses all kinds of different stats and information. And when we did this for the Championship on Friday, there was mixed reviews. And I'm sure today some of you guys will be pretty happy with the prediction. Some of you will be thinking, what on earth is going on? Before I started recording this video, I have had a sneak preview of it, and there are some absolutely wild predictions, some really crazy ones that I'm sure you have to share your thoughts on down in the comments. Just before we get into the video as well, guys, do make sure to drop a thumbs up. We'll go for 500 likes on this one. Do make sure to hit that thumbs up button, as it is free to like, and do make sure, of course, to subscribe. It's also free to subscribe, so make sure to do that if you're happy to see Premier League and Championship football return this week. Let's go from the bottom of the table, working our way up. So then we're going to go through it in groups of 5, starting with the bottom 5 predicted here by BetVictor's Supercomputer. And interestingly enough, it is the current bottom 5. This is the order. You can see Sheffield United are going down in 20th place with this prediction. Burnley, who won the Championship, going down in 19th. Bournemouth are going down in 18th. And as you can see, only 1 point behind Luton Town, who are going to stay up in 17th place. Everton rounding up that bottom 5 in 16th. Now, my initial thoughts when I saw this bottom 5 was of surprise. Maybe I can go along with Everton being in 16th place. Out of these bottom 5, they have looked the best, really. They're the highest in the table at the moment. Their form is pretty good over the last 3 or 4 games. And I could probably go along with Sheffield United being 20th at the moment. Not that I'm ruling them out of a chance of staying up. I do think they could stay up. But right now, they are rooted to the bottom, having lost 7 out of 8. It's the 3 teams between Sheffield United and Everton I am most fascinated by. Luton Town rising to the top of those 3 and being in 17th place. And what's also very fascinating is how tight BetVictor thinks it will be between Bournemouth, Luton Town and Everton. 2 points separating those 3 teams there, which if that played out would mean we'd have one hell of a final day relegation battle on our hands. If I'm going to be honest and give my opinions looking at this, I think Burnley out of the 5 of them are probably being the most underestimated, albeit they are in the bottom 3 at the moment, but it is so close down there. I think the majority of footballing fans I have seen share their opinions on this relegation picture. Do fancy Burnley out of the 3 newly promoted teams to have the best chance of staying up. And if it was to be at a team that's been in the Premier League more than 1 season's cost, it would be AFC Bournemouth. That said, another thing I wanted to point out is I think BetVictor is actually overestimating most of these teams down here in terms of how many points they're going to get on the board. Maybe not Burnley, maybe not Everton, but Sheffield United right now, it'd be great to see them stay up. But right now, can I see them actually getting to 22 points? Luton Town and Bournemouth have surprised me with the points they've been predicted to get here. One thing I've said about this season is I expect a low tide. At the moment, Luton, Bournemouth and Burnley, 4 points, 4 points, 3 points, and that's all after 8 games. So I reckon there'll be a lower tide than this. Having said that though, going back to the positions, Luton Town to finish in 17th would be incredible. They currently sit 17th, mainly down to the fact that all 4 of them down there are struggling and they've just had enough to be better than the other 4 at the moment. They're just above that bottom 3 on goal difference. But if Luton Town do stay up, that'd be an incredible achievement. So many people are writing them off, but not the Supercomputer. Do share your thoughts, guys, on the Supercomputer's bottom 5. Bournemouth, Sheffield United and Burnley are the bottom 3, Luton and Everton staying up. So then let's move up the Premier League table. The next 5 teams occupy sort of mid-table places. We find Wolverhampton Wanderers, Chelsea, Nottingham Forest, Fulham and Crystal Palace. And going through these in chunks of 5, this is the set of 5 teams I feel, in my opinion, could be the most accurate. Just goes to show what I think of some of these predictions, I must say. First of all, Wolves in 15th. They currently sit in 14th place. I don't think this is a terrible shout from BetVictor's Supercomputer. I do think Wolves are going to keep their heads above water. We saw that going into the international break with some of the results they've been picking out. Gary O'Neill's walked this walk before with Bournemouth staying up, and I think they finished in 15th place last year. Chelsea in 14th place. I'd potentially swap Chelsea and Fulham around, but I'm not even 100% sure about that. Just goes to show what I think of Chelsea Chelsea over the last 12, 18 months that I genuinely think a 14th place prediction from the Supercomputer isn't terribly off. It does look like they could be slightly underestimating them, as they have still got quality to be a little bit above that. But hey, they finished 12th last year. They're 11th at the moment. They're not a million miles away from potentially a 14th place finish. I find it funny when you look at the points here, you do the maths there, you can see Chelsea are only 8 points clear of the bottom 3 at the end of the season. That is wild. Imagine if they were to be in an actual relegation battle. We joked about it last season, but this would be even closer because they finished 12th last year. This is 14th. In 13th, Nottingham Forest. Now, I predicted Forest to finish 13th this season. So too did Sophie. A lot of Nottingham Forest fans shared their opinions at the start of the season. I think we got a lot of 12th, 13th and 14th place predictions from their own fans, and they're kind of in that position. They are currently 13th at the moment. The Supercomputer reckons they ride out a 13th place finish, and if you look at that, 45 points, it's 7 points better than last season. At the time of recording this video, Nottingham Forest, like I say, currently sit in 13th place. They're above a point per game, and you know, remember, it was the slow start to last season which kind of left them in the relegation battle. They've had a pretty good start to this season. They're not losing many. There's a few draws in there, and they're currently only 3 points off that top half, so they're having a pretty solid start. I'd say 13th is where I reckon they'll finish, but wouldn't rule out maybe 12th or 11th. But with this one, I think the Supercomputer and me are seeing Nottingham Forest around the same. Forest fans, certainly share your thoughts. 13th place, would you agree with that? In 12th place, we find Fulham in the Supercomputer's predictions. Fulham do currently sit 12th in the Premier League table right now. They're on 11 points, only 1 point outside that top 10, and they did sneak into a top 10 finish last season. So once again, I wouldn't rule that out, and the Supercomputer thinks they'll be close again. In my opinion, I actually think Fulham's achievements over the last 18 months or so have kind of gone under the radar. They smashed the Championship in first place with so many points, which a lot of people predicted them to do, but it is a different thing going and actually doing it. And then last season, you know, a lot of people predicted them to go straight back down. They finished top 10, and they've had another good start to this season. And I just think with the likes of Brighton, Villa, Newcastle doing so well, and you know, the focus down the bottom as well, which of the newly promoted teams will stay up, Fulham have quietly gone about their business, becoming a Premier League regular again. I'd put them on a par with Crystal Palace and Chelsea. As you can see, the Supercomputer has predicted them to be in the same bracket as them. So Fulham fans, I think this is a pretty reasonable prediction from the Supercomputer. Do you? In 11th place, we find Crystal Palace. After Selhurst Park, 11th place is their second home, isn't it? They've finished there in so many of the recent seasons, and the Supercomputer is going for that again. Crystal Palace do currently sit in 9th place, but it is so congested in the middle that there'll be a lot of movement through the season. They might peak up and go back up to about 8th or 7th. They might drop down to about 12th or 13th, but I don't think at any point through the season they'll be far away from 11th place, and I think that's probably where they could level out. So once again, with the Supercomputer, I am agreeing on this one. Palace fans, do you agree? An 11th place finish with 50 points on the board. Right then, guys, let's move on to the next 5 teams, and there's some very interesting shouts here from the Supercomputer. We're going from 10th to 6th, then we've got West Ham United, Brentford, Manchester United, Tottenham in 7th place, and Aston Villa climbing up to 6th place from a 7th place finish last season. Let's start with West Ham United. West Ham United to get 55 points would be incredible. A much improved season in the Premier League compared to last year. We did say though that their poor season in the Premier League you could put down to how far they went in the Europa Conference League, and I can see them going quite far in the Europa League this year, and maybe that could be why the Supercomputer has nudged them down a couple places, because as I say, they currently sit in 7th and they've put them down to finish in 10th. It'd still be a top half finish, which would be incredible. It is a different kettle of fish this time round for West Ham United though, because the Europa League is obviously a lot tougher than the Europa Conference League. Not trying to take anything away from last season, it was a great achievement, but I think being realistic, semi-finals would be a great achievement for West Ham. Imagine if they got to the final, that'd be incredible. But if they don't win that competition and they don't get a top 7 or top 8 place finish, which it could depend on, depending on how the new format for the Champions League and Europa League works next season, then they might not have European football next season. But West Ham United fans, do share your thoughts on that one. Would you take 10th place and semi-finals of the Europa League? I mean, like I say, it would mean that there'd be no European football next season, but that's still 2 solid performances in both competitions, if that makes sense. I think 10th isn't a terrible shout from the Supercomputer. I'd maybe have West Ham 9th, but in 10th place is where the Supercomputer's put them. In 9th place we find Brentford, and this is obviously where they finished last season, but I do think it'd be more impressive if they were to do it this time round. I'm not ruling it out. This is where the Supercomputer's put them, and I wouldn't have them a million miles away from this in my own prediction. But their slow-ish start, the fact that they've won 1 in 8, they've drawn a lot of games, they're not a bad side obviously, and I do think they will improve, but that slowish start, and obviously no Ivan Toney at least till January, it'd be an incredible achievement if they can climb these 6 places and get that top 9 finish again. I think we've gone past a stage where there's the big 6, the top 6, because that's splattering out into a top 9, top 10. You've now got Newcastle, you've got Villa, you've got Brighton. They're all part of the equation. I'd love to see Brentford get European football. West Ham are in there as well. So as I say, on my opinion for this one, I wouldn't have Brentford a million miles from this. Maybe 10th, maybe 9th, but there's not a lot in that. I do think they'll climb up the table, but like I say, I personally think it'd be an incredible achievement if they got 9th place again. More impressive this time round, in my opinion. In 8th place we find Manchester United, and I think this one could be right. Do share your thoughts on Manchester United, a real tricky one here. If they continue to play like they have done so far this season, throughout the season, they're not getting 8th. 8th is too high for them. But you think there should be at least a good run where they pick up 3 wins in a row at some point, and that blasts them up 2 or 3 places at that moment in time. I can already say right here, right now, they are not getting 3rd place again. I don't think Manchester United get 3rd place again. Yes, it's not mathematically impossible, but they're not good enough. They're not good enough so far this season, and teams at the top have already blasted so far away that Manchester United's form now would have to be ridiculous. So what I think here is an 8th place prediction isn't terrible. It might be enough for Europa Conference League, depending on how the structure of this is going to be. If there's going to be 5 Champions League places, I would imagine that means 6th and 7th is Europa and 8th is Conference League, but I'm not 100% sure if that's been confirmed yet. They're obviously still in the Champions League because it's the group stages. They've not had a good start, but they could still save that and maybe get a 2nd place finish. Or even if they finish 3rd, maybe they can have a good run in the Conference League. And they're still in the Carabao and obviously FA Cup at the moment, because the FA Cup's not even started for the Premier League teams. So maybe they can save their season in that way. But for the Premier League right now, I would say 8th is maybe as high as it can get for Manchester United, possibly 7th, but not higher than that. The team the Supercomputer has put in 7th place is Tottenham Hotspur, and this is one I strongly disagree with. I don't really understand this at all. 65 points. Bear in mind they picked up 20 from 8 games. That would mean 45 points in their next 30 games. 1.5 points per game. I just don't see it. Yes, Tottenham Hotspur have had a ridiculous start to the season, and it might be hard to sustain that. 8 games without losing, 6 wins, 2 draws, 20 points every 8 games. If they keep doing that, it would get them the title. I'd love to see them in the title race. I don't fancy them for the title. I still fancy Man City, but in no way do I see this kind of drop off, and I really don't get it from the Supercomputer. I really don't. Down to 7th place would be a catastrophe here. Tottenham would have to go on a really bad run. Yes, there's obviously no Harry Kane, and when you're on a bad run, a striker like that could carry you and get you those extra goals and extra points to keep you in contention for things. But I'm intrigued to see if there's anyone watching that can actually see this kind of drop off. Like I say, maybe to 3rd, maybe to 4th, potentially 5th at a push, but all the way down to 7th, like I say, there'd have to be a really bad run. Does anyone see that happening? Down in the comments, do let me know down below. I think this is a really bold shout from the Supercomputer, and I'm not against bold shouts. No one really would have predicted Leicester City to get relegated at the start of last season, but I don't know. What do you reckon? In 6th place, the Supercomputer has gone for Aston Villa. Now, I think with this prediction, we've gone back to a bit more of normality. This is a prediction I could potentially see playing out. Villa, 5th, 6th or 7th for me. They finished 7th last season, and I think at minimum, I reckon they do that again. Obviously, this time around, they've got a European competition on Thursday nights, and I do think they'll go far in the Europa Conference League. They are my favourites to win that. And potentially, like we saw with West Ham, there could be a little regression in the Premier League, but they've already given themselves such a good start with 16 points from 8 games. They're already on 2 points per game. And as I say, at a minimum, I think they get another top 7 finish. It is very competitive. Let's not beat around the bush. Man City, Liverpool, Arsenal, Newcastle, Brighton, Spurs. There's lots of strong teams, and a little slip up can cost you a lot when the race is this fast and this intense. But I think 6th here is a reasonable prediction from the Supercomputer. Let me know if you agree. So then on to the top 5 teams, and as you can see, I've highlighted these all together because there is that real potential that 5th gets Champions League this season as well. And this is what the Supercomputer's gone for. Brighton in 5th place, Liverpool in 4th, Newcastle 3rd, Arsenal 2nd, and the Supercomputer still thinks Man City win the league. Now then, I'm intrigued to know your thoughts on this top 5 and the order they're in. I think all 5 of these teams are great, and they're all going to be in that conversation of top 5, top 3, and a title race. The only difference is I would have Tottenham further up the table, and the teams I think Tottenham would finish ahead of would all have to move down 1 place accordingly. Let's start with Brighton in 5th place. Just like Villa, this is a 1 place improvement on last season because Brighton got 6th and now they're jumping up to 5th. Villa got 7th, they're now jumping up to 6th. Brighton at this moment in time do sit in 6th place. They've had a pretty good start. They've had a couple of inconsistent results. There's some real strange ones in there. There's results like the Villa game, which Brighton fans will be hoping is just a blip. But those kind of results do blow things wide open. Obviously, Brighton as well are also in a European competition this year. They're currently fighting in the Europa League. I think 5th isn't a terrible shout for Brighton. If I had to give them a 2-place spread, I'd say 5th or 6th for Brighton. So on this one, I don't think the Supercomputer's a million miles off. In 4th place are Liverpool. Liverpool currently sitting 4th in the Premier League right now. They had a really blistering start, only picked up 1 point in their 2 games coming into the international break. But they got a decent run of games after that, and I think they might potentially climb up to 3rd in the next coming weeks. As an overall observation, Liverpool already looked 2, 3, 4 times better than what they did last season. It was towards the end of the season they looked okay, but for the first 2/3, Liverpool were really questionable. So far, they've looked good. As I say, if you're going to look at those last 2 games in isolation, you can maybe ask a couple of questions, but the Tottenham game was controversial, and the Brighton game, they were winning going into the latter stages, but, you know, top teams have got to see those results out. I think 4th isn't a terrible shout here from the Supercomputer. Once again, if I had to go for a 2-place spread, 3rd or 4th for Liverpool for me. In 3rd place we find Newcastle United. This is quite a big jump considering everything going on here. Newcastle finished 4th last season, so to finish 3rd is obviously an improvement on last season, and remember they've got Champions League football to contend with this season as well, which I do think they're going to get out their group considering how well they've done so far. And they've had a slow-ish start to this season. Not their last 4 games. In their last 4 games, they've picked up 10 points, so they're certainly going in the right direction. But in the first 4 games, they did lose 3, and that's given them a little mountain to climb up. But one of the teams in the Premier League that I think are capable of climbing up a mountain are Newcastle United. And overall, there's a lot of positivity at the club. Now, people might say the Champions League football is going to be a distraction, and they might suffer the consequences in the Premier League. It can also work the reverse. You look at the positivity from the PSG game. The fans are absolutely rocking at St James's Park. If you take that into the next match day in the Premier League on a Saturday, that can get you another 3 points. With the potential of 5th place in the Premier League getting Champions League next season, I do think Newcastle United make it. I'd give them a 3-place spread of 3rd, 4th or 5th. 3rd place isn't impossible, obviously, but it is a big climb up the table. And considering how many teams have had a good start, there's still quite a bit of that mountain to climb for Newcastle United. It's still the early stages of the season. Does anyone agree with Newcastle United in 3rd place? That's where the Supercomputers put them. And finally then, in 1st and 2nd place in the Supercomputers predictions, we have the champions and the runners-up from the Premier League last season. Manchester City in 1st place, Arsenal in 2nd. I do feel like when we see these predictions and most people going for Man City to win the league, me being one of them, we do get a lot of, oh, this is boring, Manchester City winning the league again. And I do agree with that to an extent. It would be nice to see someone else win the Premier League. Not that I've got anything against Manchester City. I've tipped them to win the league. I think they're a fantastic team. They're the strongest team in my opinion, but it would freshen things up to see another team win the league, or at least a better title race this time round, and that's potentially what we might have. Man City have lost their last 2 games coming into the international break, but the Supercomputer, along with me and probably still the majority of football fans, still think Man City will end the season strong and take that title again. As you can see, 85 points is the forecast here from the Supercomputer for Man City, which isn't always enough to win the Premier League title, so it maybe shows it's not maybe Manchester City's strongest season, but still will be enough. Arsenal there predicted to get 78 points. If you're a Gunner or you're a Man City fan, do share your thoughts. Do you think it'll be you two in the title race this year, or do you think Tottenham, Liverpool or Newcastle could be somewhere in the equation? Let me know down below. So then guys, that wraps up a Supercomputer's prediction from 1 to 20. That was Bet Victor's prediction. If you want to check out the Championship one, go back and see the most recent video we did on Friday. If you've enjoyed this video guys, please do make sure to drop a like. It was just a bit of fun, don't get too upset. We're just trying to kill time while the international break is coming to a close. Do make sure, of course, to subscribe as well. And as I say, domestic football returns this week. We'll be back with Premier League predictions on Wednesday with Sophie. I'll see you in the next one. Peace out.